So I had a shower thought this morning. Yes, it was a weird shower thought. I have 2 times of the day where I think it's when I walk the dogs and when I have a shower. And my shower thought was, because I know there were a couple presenters that didn't show up, what if it was just an elaborate 15-year-old saying, I hate teachers, making a Twitter account so people followed them, pretending they were teachers, handing out maybe some lesson plans that that he was getting in the classroom, and then he applied to speak at a tech conference and just never showed up. Right? You could actually run a whole career off that, because technically his name or her name would actually be on the website. So then they could just keep advertising themselves as speakers because they've spoke at different conferences. This could be a problem. Right? We take everything at face value on the internet, right? Why couldn't somebody do that to us? Huh? That has nothing to do with my speech, though. So don't worry about that. I'll give everybody another minute to maybe show up, because it is the last session on Friday. But I'm not expecting much. Or do you just want to go so you can go out? Let's do that. I'll just start talking. If they show up late, that's fine. So a couple weeks ago, I had to come up with a title for this presentation. And if you know me, I tend to ramble. And you'll notice that a lot in the next hour, that rambling is my thing. So I came up with this one and said, there's no app for that. So in 8 years of doing this Connect conference, because I've had to present for all of the 8 years, I've always talked about how great tech was, and I do that whole app smash thing when it all came out in the beginning, and you need to use this app, and you need to use this app. And now I'm going to completely go back on that and tell you I lied for 7. Because I don't think there's an app for everything. And it's just taken me 8 years to realize that. So I found my comic. This is my gratuitous comic that has to be in every slide. By encouraging people to connect more devices, what's going to happen to old-fashioned face-to-face human contact. I just found an app for that yesterday. And I think of my kids, because I have 4. I have 4 kids, all under the age of 10. And every single one of them has a cell phone, so you can look at me and say, oh, really? But my kids know how to use their technology, and they download apps. Even my 4-year-old will go download apps because it's the thing to do. And I just keep looking at it, and over the years, I've realized that I don't even go to the App Store anymore. I am completely bored with apps. I think I've come to the point where I've downloaded so many, and I've looked at that they're just rehashing the same old ideas over and over and over again. But before I get into that, I want to know why you're here. Okay, so everybody in this room, and there's not many of you if you've seen the conference, and I'm okay with that. But why are you here? So I have 3 guesses why you're here. Number 1, you need to prove to your administrator that you stuck it out. So yeah, there we go. We had a hand clap. We've got one. Number 2, your family hasn't arrived yet to start your long weekend, and you're killing time, because that happens a lot down here. And number 3, you know me and you feel bad that nobody will be here in the last time slot of the conference. And I know who you are, people. Luckily, it's not her. Anyway, she's just here because she has to. But the reality is, maybe it's because we're all frustrated with this. Okay? This has become, this generation's, there's so many channels on and nothing to watch. I mean, my kids don't watch TV. I don't even have TV channels in my house. I do not have a cable box. I've never had a cable box. My kids have never known cable and have therefore never known a commercial. They watch Netflix. They go on YouTube. They do the apps thing. And I will see my kids flipping through randomly, picking apps, getting bored after 30 seconds and moving on to the next one. And this is what our students do too. It is completely mind-numbing, the apps problem. So why am I here? I'm here to tell you there's hope. I'm here to tell you that we all don't have to worry about the apps, that somehow it'll all work itself out. And that'll be a good thing for everybody, and that'll be a good thing for education. And I'm also here because I think I have a little bit of a leg to stand on when I sit here and talk to you. Right? Just like my little shower thought in the beginning, the 15-year-old who faked his way through. I don't think I faked my way through. In the beginning, yes, I did. Absolutely. I started teaching 17 years ago, and for 8 years, I was the guy that the phys ed teachers called Doogie because I carried a laptop around, and they thought it was hilarious because a teacher does not walk around with a laptop, and they picked on me constantly. And then about 9 years ago, I applied to the IT consultant job, and I had no idea what an IT consultant did, but I applied anyway, and I somehow managed to get that job, and I said, what do I do now? So I faked it. And I pretended, because I didn't really know. And I slowly worked into that job and did that job for 6 years, and the last 3 years I've been an instructional coach, and I've watched the whole change in education. I've watched it get turned on its head over the last 10 years. And if you guys have been in education, you've seen that too, right? It's hard now. It's different. You know, when I started 17 years ago, I taught the way that my teachers taught me. I stood up at the front of the room and I imparted all of the knowledge that I had on them because I was the smartest person in the room. And the kids couldn't go anywhere for answers. I mean, they still did what we had to do when we were at school. How many people remember going to the library and mom would get all the group and we'd all go sit and read an encyclopedia and we'd put together that really big Bristol board presentation? Yeah, it was terrible. But that's the only thing we could do. So now, if I'm teaching, it's different. Because the kids have all of their information at their fingertips. They can tell if I'm lying right away. They can tell if I'm a phony because they can Google it and find out the answer. Not that they're very good at Googling. Some of them are really terrible at that too. But they can. All the information's there for them to sift through. So I'm here to tell you that I don't think we should be doing that anymore. We need to change, right? We need to change how we process that information. So over the years, I've seen all the apps come in, and then the kids are out there, and my wife's still a teacher, and she keeps telling me, you haven't been in class in a long time. It's changed. You're not going to like it anymore. It's hard. And I said, yeah, okay. And I have to go back to a classroom. Next week, I find out what my new classroom's going to be, and I get to take that over next year. And I intend to have fun with it because I'm going to challenge myself to do something different. Because ultimately, this is what matters. Our kids need to be enlightened. Our kids need somebody who's willing to take that step and say, you know what? I'm going to do something better for you. Okay, these aren't my kids. This is some random picture on the internet. I'm not going to lie, I found it. But this kid looks awesome right in the middle. This one right here. Like, he looks so excited to be himself. Right? And that's what we want to engage. We want our kids to be super excited when they hit the classroom. We don't want them to get to school and say, ugh, I hate going to school. Go ask my 7-year-old. Ava, do you want to go to school today? No. Why? I don't like school. I don't want to hear that. I want my kids to be excited about every single step they take in that classroom. I want my kids to think that every day is an exciting challenge and they're going to learn something and they're going to do something great and they're going to be great people because of it. And that's why I want to go back to a classroom. So I tend to ramble, but I'm going to bring it back. And I'm going to give you the brief history of apps. Okay? This is a very brief history of apps because apps have not existed for very long. But the history of apps goes way back to April 3rd, 1973. Does anybody know what April 3rd, 1973 is? It's 3 years before I was born. That's not the answer, though. No. April 3rd, 1973 was the very day that the first cell phone call was made. Ah, see? This was the history of apps. This was the very first app because the only app that came on that phone was a phone. Huh? See, I even had a laugh there, too. And then it went to this thing called the Scion Epoch, and I had no idea what this was until the other day when I looked it up. The Scion Epoch was the first handheld device that was based on the Symbian platform that eventually worked its way into Android and other things. But still, nobody knew what it was. But everybody kind of knew this thing right here. What's this? Anybody remember that? I loved that thing. It was a Palm Pilot. It was only one color. It was really slow, and you could put MarkBook on it. It never really worked well, but you could put MarkBook on it. And that was the first thing that I could walk around with and show a kid their mark. And it was great. It was fun. And then everything really changed on that date, July 10th, 2008. Anybody know the significance of that day? Well, it wasn't the day the iPhone came out, because the iPhone came out prior to that, but that was the day they turned on the App Store. That was the very first day that 500 apps were available for people. That changed everything. Because now, we all know what an app is. My 3-year-old knows what an app is. 4-year-old knows what an app is. He cried 2 weeks ago because he said he wanted a phone for his 4th birthday, and I looked at him like, "What? I have an old iPhone." "It's slow, Daddy. I need a new one." And he cried, and I went, "What is wrong with these kids?" Yeah, I didn't get him one, so he doesn't like me anymore. But the App Store growth through the years, this has drastically changed how we all do things. I mean, I even laugh just looking out today, because if you walk outside right now and look at the side of the room right now, everybody puts their face in their phones, and everybody looks at it, and everybody's got their go-to apps. And then when you get bored, you go to the App Store and you find something new, and you get bored with that and you find something new, because that's what we can do. And if you look at the history, there were just over 1 million of each App Store, 1 million apps in each App Store in 2014. As of 2017, there were over 3.5 million in the Google Play Store and just over 2 million in the Apple App Store. Now, there were more at one point, but Apple apparently culled a whole bunch of the old stuff that didn't work in the old phones, and they moved on. But how many times have these apps been downloaded? It's a crazy number. In fact, I had to look it up twice to make sure it was the right number. 268 billion downloaded apps. That's crazy. 268 billion. And if you take the 7.6 billion people that were alive and take this number and divide by that, you get 35 apps per person. This is including infants. This is including third world countries. This is including people that would never even access a phone. 268 billion people clicked accept, download, and waited for something to come to their phone. That's crazy. And there's apps for absolutely everything, right? That's the joke. There's an app for everything. I was at a conference a week and a half ago, and I was eating dinner alone, and somebody walked past me and said, "Oh, it'd be funny if you had a candle in front of you. It looks really romantic, you sitting there alone." And I said, "Yeah, that would be funny." And then some other guy across the room said, "I bet there's an app for that." So I downloaded it. There were like 30 flickering candle apps for my phone, and I sat it in front of me, and everybody else thought it was funny and laughed too. But there's an app for everything. There's an app that solves your math problems. Yeah. This is great for math teachers everywhere, because not only does it give you the answers, it will show you the steps to your answers. There's an app that calculates all of the food that you need to eat during the day to remain healthy. They got hacked, but still, you were healthy. You were calculating every single thing that you put in your body. There is an app that figures out everything for an electrician, from the gauge of wire to the length of wire to all of the stuff that they need to do for their job, so they don't even have to think anymore. They can calculate it all from their phone. There is an app for interior designers to take pictures of a room and put all the measurements on so they never have to remember, and that sometimes they don't ever even have to pull at a tape measure anymore because it figures it out for them. And we have personal assistants that do all of our work for us. I use my Google now. It just tells me when I have to leave from home to make it to a school. "Oh, by the way, if you need to make it to the school by 9 o'clock this morning, you need to leave in 5 minutes. Great, thank you, personal assistant. I don't have to do anything anymore. But then there's also the fact that there's so much garbage out there too. Anybody ever heard of this one? Okay, these are funny. This one is called Car Finder. It's to find your car, but a pirate tells you where it is. Run P, which a lot of people have probably heard of, so that when you're going to the movies, you go to the Run P app and type the movie that you're going into, so it tells you when to go pee during the movie so you don't miss major plot points. Oh, come on, that's awesome. Completely unnecessary, but awesome. And my favorite, this is for me, for the people that know me. This is an app called Demotivational Pics. I am not the happiest person in the world. And this is awesome for me. But demotivational pics. This is the world we live in, people. People make money by making demotivational pics and pee apps. There were some others that I refrained from putting in an education presentation. But this is what we have to deal with. This is what our kids do. They sit there and they go through and they find an absolute app for everything. They don't have to work anymore. They don't have to do math. They don't have to do science. They don't have to even know the tools they need to become an electrician in this world because somebody's made an app for that. And I find that to be a huge problem. Because how are they going to understand the basics if somebody's always doing it for them? Right? If I can cheat on every math problem, that's great, and I will pass every single math quiz, and I will pass every single math assignment you give me. I won't be able to do the tests for the exams, but hopefully the percentage is low enough on that I can just make my way through. And it will work. People do use this to cheat the system, because they can. Because this way of teaching them is the reason they're going to those apps. Right? If I sit there and I tell my kids exactly what to do and the steps I want them to reproduce to get to that point, and tell them, okay, your turn, why would they want to? Why are they excited about reproducing my steps? They're not. It's not exciting. Okay? I think back to my teachers. I hated being in a physics class, and I became a physics teacher because of my physics class. He was the most boring man in the world. His jokes were written in his binder. I kid you not, he would giggle about 5 minutes prior to the joke being said because he knew it was coming because he was scanning. And so when I went back to my practice, when I started my practice teaching, I actually got to teach in my old high school, and he had retired the year prior, thank goodness, because things would not have gone well between us. But I had to check because he left the binders, and sure enough, they were there. Okay, to me, that's not somebody who cares about what the kids are learning. To me, that's somebody who cares that they can come from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock and go home. Because when we do this to our kids, what are they going to choose? They're going to choose the path of least resistance. They're going to stay in bed because that's their safe place. They're going to go on social media because that's their safe place. And they're going to skip all of the great learning that could be done if we didn't have this. So we have to make this huge shift between teaching skills and teaching content, because that world where we had to go sit in a library before and learn all of the stuff that was in the books and try to make sense of it with our partners before mom came to pick us up with the minivan, that's changed. The world is out there. The content is out there. The knowledge is there. It just needs to be cherry-picked. And it needs to be sifted through so that kids can figure out what to do with it. So instead of teaching content, we need to teach the skills to go with it. Everything can be a skill. So that the textbook isn't the driving force for our education anymore. You know, going to the curriculum documents. I know, we have this rule that the curriculum documents are, but they're really a framework. Right? And in there, you can play with those things. Right? They're not as strict as a textbook that has to follow through in every single step. Curriculum expectations can be definitely played with. And I don't know about you, but I have never seen a curriculum cop come to a school and say, "You missed that one." So what we need to do is assess the kids in our class and actually figure out what they need to learn with, not what they need to learn. And we need to break those skills down for them. So I've seen a lot of great things. Being an instructional coach, some of the coaches on our team are strictly math coaches. And they spent the last 3 years doing spiraling. Anybody heard spiraling? Spiraling math is awesome. Okay, spiraling is the idea that you slowly build up their skill level, introducing little concepts as you go along, so that they're constantly getting same things over and over and over again. You're not teaching units anymore. You're teaching skills. And you're constantly making things harder as they go so that they understand everything. You don't just chunk it from September to October and say, "This is Unit 1, forget about that, and you'll get that again in January when the exam comes." They're actually going through all the subjects. So I've been lucky enough to work with a science teacher who wanted to do this in grade 9 science. And I'll tell you, being an old science teacher myself, I have never seen kids more excited about learning than when they were doing the spiraling stuff. So because Trevor decided that he was just going to do skills. Grade 9 science, we all took it, right? There was the biology unit, the chemistry unit, the earth science, and physics, right? Those were our standards. They didn't really mix. once you did that unit test for biology and you were into chemistry, they were done. So what he's done is he started off with graphing. All right, let's go to graphing. So he started with density, and everybody had to do density in chemistry. We floated stuff, we figured out the surface area, and we figured out the volume, and we had those straight line graphs that told us density, right? Everybody remember that? And instead of moving to that, the next thing he went and did was population dynamics and biology. So now it was a curved graph. Well, what does a curved graph tell us versus a straight graph? And then he moved, he says, I want to try something, but I want you there for that. I said, okay, what are we doing? He says, we're going to search for exoplanets. And I thought, what? How is a grade 9 going to search for exoplanets? And sure enough, our kids found exoplanets. And the discussions that they were having were amazing because it wasn't anything I'd ever seen in a grade 9 class before. They had never had a lecture. Like, remember the proper science lecture, imparting the knowledge? In 3.5 weeks, he hadn't actually done a lecture yet. He had just done skills, did it all through lab analysis, and the kids were totally engaged because they weren't helpless anymore. They had never learned to be helpless in a science class in high school. They had no idea what that was. So while the other grade 9 science classes were rotely going through the units, Trevor's class was talking about exoplanets and what that meant and the data behind it. And I was shocked because I didn't think it would work, because I only knew the way I'd seen it before. And I'll tell you, going back next year, that made me excited, because if I get my grade 9 science class, you better believe I'm doing it that way. Because those kids knew stuff. And this is what we came up with for him. So this is their portfolio. We actually went through that curriculum document. We made a slide for every single expectation in that curriculum document, like those big major ones. And this is the kids' job throughout the year for their final project, is to prove it. We cleaned up the language a little bit, but we told them their job was to prove that they actually hit that curriculum expectation. We told kids that they have to manage their education and figure out if they've learned it. How cool is that? They're out explaining it. They're taking GIFs of their labs and actually, the one is actually from the classroom. And if it's not good enough to explain that they do it, they have a whole semester to figure out if they did it better. Because part of the expectation in our rubric was, go and change stuff. Just because you did it once doesn't mean that's the time you did it the best. Now, this is my only video clip. This is Eddie Zong, and I normally wouldn't play this video, but I'm just going to do a little small snippet because Eddie Zong had one of the coolest quotes I saw. No one has ever changed the world by doing what the world has told them to do. And I'm guessing everybody in this room, nobody's heard of Eddie Zong, right? Oh, you heard of Eddie Zong? Oh, okay, good. I was going to say, you have watched way too much YouTube. So Eddie is going to explain why he's passionate. There we go.
And since I had no idea about what I wanted to be when I grew up, I just listened to my parents almost 100% of the time. I trusted that they knew what was best for me. My parents wanted out of me what any typical parent would want out of their child. So go to school, keep up your grades, get out and exercise once every few years. And I was trying to do everything they asked of me, except the problem was, I wasn't even that good at school. I was terrible at science, couldn't write a 5-paragraph essay if my life had depended on it. And to this day, I still think I'm the only Asian kid in the world that doesn't understand math. I really do. But when I turned 14, that all changed. And I was no longer this hot air balloon floating around in space. I was now like a supersonic jet flying towards my destination at like 50,000 miles an hour, or however fast those things go. And this change all started when I received an envelope in the mail. It was an invitation, not to a birthday party, I didn't get any of those, not to a playground, but to a business plan competition down in Boston. And I was curious. I was just so curious that I had to go. And the program director explained to us that over 5 months, we would form a team, develop a business idea, and present this idea to a panel of judges who would be judging us on, how good our suits are and how good our business ideas were. And long story short, over that 5 months, I formed a team, developed an idea. And we actually ended up winning that competition and taking home a check. And that one event sparked my interest for going to more and more of these competitions. And over the next 2 years of my life, I actually went to dozens and dozens of these competitions, and I was winning almost all of them. And I realized that I liked going to them so much, not just because I liked winning them, but also because I had an unrealized passion. And that was a passion for...
Sorry, go back to the mic. Unrealized passion was key for me on that one. Our kids have all these unrealized passions. They have no idea what they want to be. And you know, we talk about that over and over again. Oh, do what you want to do. But wait, you can do that after grade 12 when you're done my courses. When you've done what I told you to do in math and when you've done what I've told you to do in science. And we miss a lot of these kids. Like, he did not do well in school. I mean, he fully admits he could not do math. He could not do science. He cannot write an essay. It doesn't mean he's not smart. But that's what we do to a lot of these kids that have these passions that they just haven't found yet, is they start failing. And that gets worse and worse and worse. I gotta run. What's the problem with playing videos in the middle? Next, perfect. So I'm not going to completely bash technology, though. I mean, I started bashing technology because, you know, it can be a distraction and we don't use it well. But we still need to use technology in front of these kids. And I say sparingly. Okay? When it's needed, when it's good, when it works. We need to model that proper use of technology in the classroom. Jared Bennett, if anyone knows Jared from Hamilton Wentworth, I found this tweet like February. Today somebody proudly declared that they don't use tech in the class because the kids get enough at home. Depending on use at home, that's like saying we don't have a nutrition program because kids eat junk food at home. Right? The fact is that they need to see us struggling and using things properly, or trying to use things properly, and working through all those difficult pieces too. But that doesn't mean as a teacher I need to have 37 apps that I'm going to use on a regular basis during the week. Because honestly, that's just going to confuse our kids. That's terrible if I have to say, well, we're going to go to this app today, go download this one. And then this app tomorrow. And then next week you're going to do that. And by the way, the assignment that you're doing the next week, it's going to be over there in this. And we need to have some sort of consistency in our classroom. So I tell teachers, pick 4, maybe 5, if it tops, and get to learn those programs well. And use them for a multitude of things. Like, don't go find a presentation program when you can use something like Google and use it for your documents and your slides and your Google drawings and anything like that. And try to find stuff that can be used over and over again so that kids get used to using things regularly. So they learn skills. So they're not just looking for an app to be their presentation app, and an app to be their note-taking app, and an app to do this, because they're just going to get lost in that. We have to model that. They see us using things. They're going to follow what we do, because that's how kids learn. They also learn because skills make it easier to learn. Right? If I look at that science class again, once they started looking into things and actually making suggestions, they weren't looking to the teacher for answer because they knew he wasn't going to give them to them. They knew they were going to get the answers if they started to explore and play and learn all those skills. And I'll tell you, skills are more transferable than content is, right? We have all had those conversations in our staff meetings when we're told to, oh, you know, you need to do cross-curricular connections. You need to make connections between your sciences and your maths and your histories. Trying to make connections between content is brutal. But if we were all on the same page in teaching skills instead, well, that's easy, because research skills works everywhere. Math skills and graphing skills, well, they can work everywhere. Skills are the key, and kids can see connections between skills. They may not be able to see connections between content. And to find how to use those skills, they need to find problems. Okay? They don't really like to look for problems, do they? Kids look, they wait for you to tell you. They want that direction, right? Tell me what I'm supposed to do. Well, no. Life is not about somebody telling you what you're supposed to do all the time. Life is about seeing a problem and trying to figure out how to do it. So I always liken it to, there was a documentary years ago, and I can't find it anymore. It's not even on YouTube, where they were working with a bunch of young inventors. And these young inventors weren't your traditional inventors. They weren't coming up with things on their own. They were actually going into grocery stores of all places, walking through the aisles, and looking for deficiencies in product packaging. That's what they did. They reinvented the nozzle on soap. Because the problem with soap was it gets all gunky, and at the end, nobody really cares about it, and it gets clogged, so people throw it out, or they get... So they reinvented a nozzle that doesn't get all gross, and then sold that patent to all the soap companies. And that's how they invented it. They didn't go looking for a problem. They went searching for deficiencies. And because a lot of stuff's already been invented, that was an awesome thing to do. And they just made their money selling back to the companies that were making the mistakes. And all the skills that we give kids, well, once all those skills start kicking in, when they start making connections, they'll start putting it together. So this was one of my favorite examples. I'm not going to show the video, but I'll give you the slideshow and you can go look at it later. But this was a guy who was a traditional woodworker. This is what his job is. He's a traditional woodworker. And what he explains in the video is that he saw a book that had this really crazy German lap joint on it. It was this diagonal lap joint like this. You can see the little lap joint in the wood. And he said, there's no way I'd be able to do that by hand. He says, one, I don't have the patience. Two, I don't have the skill. So what he did is he went and he figured, well, I'm good with a router. And he went and designed his own 3D model and 3D printed the jig so that he could reproduce the lap joint and never have to cut one in his life. And where did he put that? He put it on Thingiverse for anybody to download and gave away all his skills for free, the stuff that he learned. And that's what our kids are doing now. They're starting to take a look at the skills they know and merging them with the new skills that they're getting through the technology and putting all those skills together, because skills are more important. Students need to explore, students need to build, students need to understand how the world around them works so that they can change it. Compliance is the worst expectation we can have of our students. Okay, compliance sucks. I never had a quiet classroom. And I had administrators always looking at me, and a couple of them didn't like the fact that I did not have a quiet classroom. To me, quiet meant that those kids weren't engaged. Quiet meant that they were scared of me. Quiet meant that they were waiting for me to give them direction, to do something, anything. And I can't do that. That's not me. I like the organized chaos. I like when the kids are chatting. I like the kids doing stuff because to me, that shows that they're engaged. They may not be engaged in exactly what I'm doing, but I can kind of bring that around if I'm good at it. And if I get those kids to be engaged in anything, well, then I can do anything I want. Compliance is evil. And my question is, as a teacher, who do you want to be? Because that is your directive. Do you want to be that person who teaches the exact same way that you were taught? Do you want to be that person imparting the knowledge and standing and lecturing every class? Because if you are, I'm sorry, that's boring. To me, you're just collecting a paycheck. Okay? We all get paid pretty well. You can go look at how all the American teachers are getting paid and all the things that are going on in the States right now because of the low pay. We don't worry about that here. In Ontario, we get paid pretty well. I mean, I don't know if you're all from Ontario, but Canada, we all get paid pretty well to be educators. That means we get paid to change. Because every job, no matter where you are, no matter what you do, whether you're a mechanic, whether you're working in a spreadsheet somewhere in the middle of a building and never seeing light because there's no windows in it, everybody has to learn to change in every single job. And mechanics need to know new cars every single year. People need to make the updates for Excel every single year and learn those things. Yet in teaching, we still have those teachers that say, I did it before like this, it'll work again. Only the products that we have are kids. The products that the mechanic has is just a car. It has no feelings. It doesn't care. But those mechanics still have to learn how to treat it better. And we need to do that for our kids too. So I want to be because to me, that's what a teacher is. That's the teacher I want to be. I want to be the teacher that excites the kids. I want to be the teacher with the energy that everybody wants to be in my class. That's what I want to be. Kids should be fighting to get into your classes, not fighting to get out of it. Anybody seen this picture? This was famous about a month ago. Yeah, you've seen it? This is the teacher from Ghana. This teacher in Ghana had no access. I think he had one computer. Was it one computer he had in his classroom? I think it was one. He had one computer for his use in the classroom. So what did he do? He taught kids how to use Microsoft Word on the chalkboard. That's insane. That's difficult. And if you're a teacher, would you want to do that? No, probably not. But this guy did. Because he, in his head, is not doing it for himself. He knows how to use Word. He's doing it for every single student in his classroom that he thinks needs to know this to make their lives better later. That's why he's doing it. Okay, we don't sit there in a classroom and say, well, I'm doing this lesson the same way I've done it for 15 years because, you know what? I know how to do this lesson. So are your lessons being prepared to challenge your students and make them comfortable with uncomfortable challenges, or are they being created with your comfort level in mind? Because if they're being created for you to be boring and rote and just get it done, then please go find another career. Because our kids are different now. They don't need this anymore. They need teachers like this guy who is completely uncomfortable and forcing everything because he thinks it's best for them. Now, this was Mr. Dunlop's presentation. I took this slide from him. Planning great lessons. He did a dot-mocracy activity with a whole bunch of teachers. And the way the dots worked, and Rob, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, the red ones were from when they started teaching. You know, what things were they passionate about? He had all these different things. What things did they enjoy? And all the teachers, when they start teaching, decided that, you know, we liked planning great lessons. That was an activity that we really enjoyed. I mean, I loved it. 17 years ago, I thought, man, I made this lesson. It was awesome. And I was so excited to plan these great lessons because they would go so well. They would make your life so much easier. And then as the years go by, do we spend that time anymore? And that's what the blue dots were. The people who weren't necessarily as excited to do those great lessons over and over and over again, you kind of just fell to the wayside. We stopped loving it somewhere along the way. Now, do we need to stop loving it, or do we need to just say, scrap it? Take those teacher binders that we have and give them a toss. Because those are the root of all evil, because that's what worked before. And they're still out there. I remember when I started teaching, I had a couple teachers say, we're going to help you out. We copy my binder. And it was a miserable 3 hours because of all the plastic inserts that I had to pull the sheets out of. There it is. Right? It's a miserable experience. But we did it because it was working before. And in our conveyor belt classrooms of kids that weren't changing, we could just pummel them with the same worksheets, pummel them with the same knowledge, watch the same old VCR video that was dead on the tracking for the first 3 minutes, but don't worry, it'll get fixed, kids. It works because it worked before. And we need to change that mentality. It doesn't work anymore. Okay, why would I show them some old videotape with tracking gone when a YouTube video is going to do it that much better? And then there's going to be another video that does it that much better. But as a teacher, I don't have time to find all those things, so guess what? The kids can go look for it and bring it to us because learning is a group activity now. It's no longer me at the front of the room being the person who tells everybody what to do. There's a book called iGen. Anybody ever heard of iGen? It's apparently the current generation. It's either Gen Z or iGen. But this quote came from the author of iGen. If you don't take chances, how can you invent yourself? If you aren't comfortable with instability, how can you create change? And that's the reality is, like, again, if we're not becoming uncomfortable in our own lesson planning and challenging ourselves to make these great things, then are we doing the best thing? So I found there's a blog at the bottom, and I'll give you this too. The three things that will get you to not fall into those pitfalls. And this was actually written by a PR person. It had nothing to do with education, But the reality is that a job, a career is a career, and we all have to follow the same rules in those careers to be successful. So don't fall into your comfort zone. We all do this in schools, right? We always do this in education. And we all do it in the courses. I mean, I was a high school teacher, and right now I'm at that point where I have to get a job next year, and I'm scared. Because what if I don't get a job in the course that I already know? And what if I have to do something that little bit different? Is that going to be good for me, or am I going to be scared? And I said, you know what? About a week ago, I said, you know what? I'm not scared. Give me whatever you want to give me, and I will make it mine no matter what. Because it, to me, is going to be a challenge. And I may not like it, but I'm going to do what I need to do because those kids deserve it. Challenge your mind. Things change. Subjects change. All of the information out in the world is changing. Don't stop changing just because the four walls of your classroom are the same. Be that person. I think the description in there was, be the person that everybody wants to go to in the office. Be the person that's going to be that one that says, you know what, I found something new last night. This is what it is. And excite everybody around you, because if you're the teacher that excites every other single teacher, you're doing great things for every student in that school, not just the ones in your classroom. And last one, take a risk. Okay? Things can blow up all the time. You should be able, at the end of the day, to sit there and look at a lesson and say, wow, that sucked. And it's okay that it sucked. And tell the kids that it sucked. Don't lie to them and say, well, you didn't get it because you weren't listening. No, they didn't get it because they had no idea what you were talking about. And you have to understand that sometimes that happens. So, stand up and say, yes, I can. Yes, I can. Right? Be that person. Be Sherman Klump and think that there is no challenge that you can't get over. Yes, I can. Teach those kids. Give them skills. Yes, you can. Sorry, I had to put that in for Kyle. So back to the book. If you ever read the book, I don't read books. I read pieces of books. So don't ask me about the whole book. I can read the whole book. But she had some really great things that she was pulling from kids. This was all done with research on our current kids. And one of the kind of interesting things about the technology is schools try to keep up. We don't do a very good job because we can't, right? Industry and everybody else gets to keep up with technology. We can't, and the kids know it, so why try to fake it? Don't bother trying to fake it. They get it. Just stick to what you know and make it work for you. Now, how do we make those changes? Well, we have to make some changes in the things that we're teaching, and I'm going to bring the coding piece in because coding's important. It's a great thing for kids to learn, and there's 5 reasons according to the CBC. Improving your digital literacy is important. Great. Number 2, if you learn another language, you can learn to code. Sure. I can't do either. Okay, I can't do other languages, and I sure as hell can't code. And I'm not going to lie to you about that. It's a skill that will always be relevant, although I can't do it. I agree that's true. Number 4, it makes you a creator of the internet, not just a consumer, which is, to me, key in that comment there. That's important for kids. And number 5, it opens up a world of possibilities. Because that's, again, what we want to do for these kids, right? We want to open up the world of possibilities. We want to give them the skills that they need, not the skills that we used to have. But coding itself is kind of a slippery slope, too, because, well, what language do I code in? What do I teach them? Do I teach them Java? Do I teach them C++? Do I teach them how to make apps for the App Store? So from Time Magazine, they're saying that don't even bother teaching them coding, teach them computational thinking, because then the coding will come later. Right? The idea that if we organize information and figure out how to organize and use algorithms to get past that, that's the important piece. And that can be done in any subject. But I'm going to make the case that coding is not the best solution. Because kids like me wouldn't have responded well to that. Okay? I'm going to make the case for taking tech classes. How many people in this room took a tech class in high school? Good, I like seeing that. Not everybody, but I think everybody should. I think every single person should take a tech class, period. Whether it's woodworking or auto or manufacturing or media, anything. Take some sort of tech class that's hands-on. Because I think kids are missing out on the hands-on skills. Because tech classes aren't for the bad kids. And we need to break that stigma. Because when you go into these high schools and you go to those tech classes, they're tech teachers that are run ragged because it has become a dumping ground. And they love it when they get an academic student in there because they don't really have to deal with a lot of the issues. But why can't every kid take a tech class? Why can't it be exciting for everybody? I taught grade 9 tech. I'll tell you, that was the best year of my life. I loved teaching tech. It was fun. It was engaging. The kids were into it because they were doing stuff that was hands-on over and over and over again. Every single day they got to touch stuff. Not just a pen or a pencil and a piece of paper and sit at a desk and rows. And tech classes aren't just for bad kids. They just aren't for bad kids. Why can't everybody take tech? Go out and tell kids to take tech. Yeah, you've seen this slide, right? So I'm going to replace every word with the word tech. Because tech is good because improving literacy is important. All right? Every subject has literacy built in. Do not think that tech teachers don't have to teach literacy. Okay? Literacy is everywhere. In fact, tech is a horrible place to teach kids literacy because, one, have you ever tried to read a manual coming from a company? They are written in a completely different technical language, and you have to go tell kids to read that. That's called disciplinary literacy. It's different every single subject. Kids have to learn to read in tech, and that's hard. But literacy is important. If you can learn anything, you can learn tech. Okay, just go try it. I want to go take a welding class right now. I've even asked at my local high school, do you have local welding classes? Because I've never learned how to weld. And the one guy said, yeah, actually, we have 2 night programs that are 3 hours twice a week. And I told my wife, and she said, no, 4 kids at home, dude. Skills that will always be relevant come from tech. My 2 woodworking classes I took are still used almost daily. I use every skill from those woodworking classes. I still do it. I still have my grade 10 final project, which was a step stool, in my bathroom for my 4-year-old to reach the sink. I love that step stool. It was tangible. I didn't love what I did in my physics and math classes. I can't remember anything I did in high school, period, in any of those classes, but I remember my step stool. How many of you remember every piece of content that you did in any of your high school classes? No. I can tell you, in my calculus, OEC calculus class, I don't remember a thing except for Mr. Sadkowski would go on 30-minute rants when you had brought up the 4th dimension. I can tell you that my science teacher, Mr. Stewart, would say is way too many times. Is in the middle of sentences. I can tell you my chemistry teacher knew every single thing on the periodic table, and he blew up lycopodium in a paint can, which is the first thing I made when I became a grade 9 science teacher, and talked about explosions. But I don't remember content. Kids don't remember content. They're going to leave your class and everything's going to get erased. But if you teach them to learn and you teach them to love learning and you teach them how to do things, they will remember that and they will remember you. I don't remember many of my other teachers. Miss Manu, I remember her because she taught me how to type. That was my keyboarding class. Being a tech person means that you're a creator, not a consumer, period. You can build your own things. And that, if you actually watch the rest of that video with Mr. Zhang there, the business guy, the reason they won all their business competitions is because they didn't just go pitch an idea. They went to Home Depot and they built it every single time. That's why they won every single business competition, because no other student group came in with working prototypes. They did. Whether they were built out of wood, whether they were screwed together, hammered together, nailed together, it didn't matter. That's what they did. And what can you expect from learning in a tech class? You can expect that kids will get problem-solving skills, because everything in a tech class is a problem. How does this work? I don't know. How does it work? Go find it. How do I build that? I don't know. How do you build that? Go find it. They'll learn critical thinking skills. They'll learn confidence. Okay? Kids leave tech classes confident because they can do something. A kid who struggles in math is going to leave math frustrated. Not confident, frustrated. But it doesn't matter if I built a really poor step stool because the top step is tilted a little bit and I see it every single time, even 30 years later. It still meant something to me because I learned how to do it. They're going to learn soft skills, which is so important. People need to learn how to talk to other people. It's not like the second slide where there's an app to talk to other people. That's not reality. When you work in business or when you work at any job, you need to learn how to talk to people, period. Patience, resilience, and last, they're just going to get some useful skill, period. Whether they become woodworkers later or physics teachers later, it doesn't matter. They're going to learn something that they're going to take with them the rest of their lives and possibly could drive their career choice. So, my last quote from Gene Tenji's book. Many iGen students seem to think their schools as behind the times, irrelevant in a fast-paced world of constant changing technology. True. I just want to take out the technology and say a lot of kids just think we're completely irrelevant, period. And it's true. Right? We have to change. We need to change. So the only way that we're going to change is by changing our structure. Now, tech classes are great, but they're not just for tech teachers. Anybody can have some sort of working station in your class. I don't care if you're a kindergarten teacher. I don't care if you're an English teacher. Everybody can have some sort of makerspace, something. It can be hot glue guns. It could be scissors and construction paper. Kids like building things, period. Okay, and I thought, being the tech guy for years, that everything revolved around tech, and it doesn't. I did an activity a couple weeks ago with some students where I had Arduinos set up, I had a 3D printer set up, I had some spheros set up, I had 5 things around the room, and then I had a wood wallet where I had these pieces of wood that they cut out with a little coping saw, and they sanded it, and I had a wood burner and some elastic to make a wood wallet. Every single kid did that. Every single one burned LV into wood wallets. Yeah, because they all thought they're wood wallets, guys, and they're not Louis Vuitton wallets. But every single kid did that. Every single one gravitated to something that they could get, something tangible, something small, something that they built, and they could bring it home because they're proud of it. That's what kids want. They want to be proud of it. These are high school kids, and they still do that. I mean, if I want my kids to not be on the computer at home and stop playing with their phones, you know what I put on my kitchen table? Glue guns. And nothing else. They find the stuff to glue. They glue all their toys together. They just glue everything. And they have so much fun gluing stuff together. And it's awesome because they're not fighting. They're not screaming at the screen. They're not looking for another game to play. They're gluing stuff. So you need to make time for them to glue stuff. In every single class, you can build stuff. You need to be the person that decides what your kids are going to do in your class, and you need to determine if everything that you're doing is for you or for them. Because what you want to do is find that unrealized passion for every single student in your classes. Every single one should walk out of your room realizing that they're good at something. And they can succeed in no matter what the life throws at them because they're good at something. So, if your family is here to pick you up so you can go take a trip to the falls, by all means, I am done. Thank you very much for coming to Connect for yet another year. And thank you very much for sticking out by the last presentation on a Friday morning, period. So go enjoy it. That's the presentation. If you want to take my name off it and present it somewhere else, trust me, that's been done before. Remember that? Somebody in the middle of one of my sessions actually took my presentation, took my name out, and reposted it on Twitter during the presentation. But I really don't care. It was kind of funny. But thanks for staying. You can tweet me if you want to tweet me. I may not answer. I am not a Twitter person. I do try every once in a while. That's it. I hope I didn't bore you, and I hope you enjoyed your hour. So thank you very much.